6:03 on Thursday, the 8th. And I'm opening up the Finance Committee meeting. The first thing on the agenda is the minutes from June 1st.
How about let's
We will in a minute, but we're going to do this first because then we can include everybody. They cannot vote on the June 1st first. So let's get this off the books.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of June 1st.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay. We don't have to do a roll call vote, guys. We can, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, approved. Okay. So, now we can do the introductions. Who wants to start? You guys fight amongst yourselves, whichever wants to
Sure.
start.
I'm Alex. Alex Mowitz. I moved to town about 7-8 months ago. I am the CFO at Emory College. So, been in accounting and finance for about 10 years. Decent background and happy to be here.
Yeah,
Nice to
you
meet
could be
everyone.
frustrated here.
I believe it. That's okay. I get frustrated very good. It's very hard to frustrate me, so good luck.
That's good.
Oh, it's not going to be us.
That's right.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
I'm Lynn Winnicka. I've been in town much longer than you. I grew up here. And the controller of an insurance agency in Worcester. I've been there for 22 years, and I've been in accounting for 30 years.
So you're going to be frustrated too.
Okay, so now we'll go around and introduce, start with you, Tommy.
I'm Tom Rashalla. I've been on the finance committee for a couple of years, and I've been in town politics for too many years. I've probably been around as long as you, or maybe a little bit longer.
How many years have you lived in town?
Have I lived in town?
Yeah.
Do I have to?
Yeah, I want to know this myself.
Hey, it's going to get to me, Tom, so.
About 70 years.
Very good.
He beats you.
He beats me.
Go ahead.
I was 7.
And a half.
Tommy didn't want to say the 7 years. Darren Ross, spent a lot of years in the fire department, 40 years. Can't be on a department and on the finance committee, so I never could. Last couple of years ago, I retired from the fire department. I got on the finance committee. This was my first full budget year. And I've been in town for 50 years, not quite as many as Tommy.
I'm Karen Norwald. I've been on the Finance Committee for too many years, and I've only been in town 22 years, but I've been an accountant for way more than that.
I'm Ted Purcell. I have been in the town since about 1988, and married to my wife, who's been here almost as long as Tony. I work for the schools. I teach over in Paxton. So whenever it's something related to the budget that affects salaries and certain portions of it, you will see me abstain from that. So if you wonder why, that would be why. I'm in the 3rd year of my first term as finance committee. I've been involved with a lot of other aspects of town politics for quite some time. Board of Health, Library Board, Little League, which is supposed to be politics, but remarkably is, oddly enough, but and I would really love to see us do something about the way the school budget is, because even though I work for the schools, it's very frustrating, which is, I know, one of our topics of discussion. So anyway, that's me.
My name is Pete O'Malley. I worked for a combination of digital equipment, compact computer, and Hewlett-Packard for 48 years. I retired 4 years ago. I've been living in the town since 2005. I got my 3 kids are here in the town. I've been on the board this is my first term like Ted, This is the third year, going into the third year for me. And I honestly mean that it is frustrating when you take your daily life and apply it to the politics here. It just doesn't seem that it should be this hard, and it is. But I'm enjoying it. I'm back for another year, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I haven't heard from Mitch, so I'm not sure he's coming. I don't
Okay.
know,
We can talk about it.
we can, I don't have an issue. And then
We
we'll just,
should introduce Tamika.
oh, Tamika, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay.
Sheepers, I've done this twice this week, I'm sorry.
That's no problem at all. I'm Tamika Murphy. I'm the secretary for this board, and 7 boards total in town, so you've probably seen my name pop up a few different places. And I grew up here in town too, so I've been here for a long time, not as long as Tom.
Good one.
Wow, she read it.
I just wanted to know, I figured I can't ask him, so this is the way to get the answer out of him.
I'm terrible with names, so if I forget, I'm sorry. I'll apologize.
That's okay.
Hey, you works, don't worry.
We all answer that.
And the other thing that you're gonna get used to is, when you don't know something, just say, hey, I'm the new guy. Because that worked for me for 2 years.
How long does it work for?
2 years, it should be 2 years.
About a year and a half, because he got scolded quite a few times last year.
But I tried.
Okay, so we're here tonight to discuss, because I know both you and Ted were both very involved and wanted to have more discussion about the school agreement that they are under review. It is frightening that 62% of our budget comes down to 12 pages.
I know.
Actually, I think it's 10, yeah, it's 10 pages. So, it gets reviewed supposedly every 5 years, and we're in the 5th year,
So every 5 years.
supposedly.
Sure.
Well, so, free form, we can.
Yep, please, that's what I want.
So I guess I don't understand what renegotiation is, what it means. Does it mean
This isn't renegotiation, it's review.
review?
It's not renegotiation.
Okay, so what does that mean? Somebody sits down and goes through a document and says, yes, we do that, yes, we do that, let's do something different there? Or what does it mean when they go through and the review? And in a review process, can something be changed, modified? Something be brought up? I mean, it seems like there's,
That's why I wanted Mitch, because I've never been
Okay.
through this, and to me, we're stuck with it.
what, and I don't understand what the amendments are. I don't understand when it says there are amendments.
But I didn't see the amendments.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
no, they
And
just
this
say
is the only one that the town has
1963,
supposedly.
there's a 1993, there's a
All right, so why don't
2016.
we go to the paragraph that talks about the review? Is there one in here that says what you do for the review?
I don't know, I read it a while ago.
When I went through it, I saw something, but I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember seeing it.
Says amendments. Well, if they're reviewed every 5 years, it's gotta be in here somewhere, because they wouldn't do it if they didn't have to.
So, I guess the thing is I don't think it's, what do we want Mitch to bring to the review board?
Well,
What would we like him to try? I'm sure it has to be a majority vote of all the towns, that's all I'm assuming.
well, so, I mean, from my perspective, I think it would be important that there's some accountability or tracking of expenses and reporting that feed into the budget, and that there's a responsibility for the school district to recognize that they need to be able to participate in the funding that is going on that provides them with their money. I mean, again, 62%, 62% of the budget is their funding. I would like them to be able to recognize that they just can't come in, because looking at the document says I can just create a budget and you present it and you get it voted on. If it doesn't pass, but all 4 of the other towns, 5 towns do, you're stuck. And you have to pay that money. Then, we're in a situation where you have to go back to the fire department, which we saw, police department, to the library, to the town administrator, we say, sorry, you guys can't spend the money that you thought you were supposed to spend. And consequently, they have to go cut people.
Hey, Woody.
I just don't like the idea that it seems like it's the dog, the tail wagging the dog here. And because it's one group, it's one department in the town budget that is really forcing the hands of the other budget. And they have no say over it. We had people at town meetings stand up, I don't know if you were there, but we had people at town meetings stand up saying, the secretaries in town are not gonna get a raise. And they've been around, they've been doing things for this town for a long time. There's this thing called a step function where you get an automatic increase when you first work for the town. And there's some people who work here forever and haven't got that step increase. So, and it's because we've had to manage, control. I guess what I'm long-winded, I
No,
apologize.
no, that's all right.
I guess what I'm really looking for first is that the towns work into their agreement with the district, that the district will rationalize their budget based upon a portion of each town's budget. And I don't know whether or not at that point, Rutland needs to be able to get the 3 to 5 towns together and say, hey guys, what do you think? Maybe we should just go ahead and put something together so
Well,
that,
how many years have we been doing the budget roundtable with the schools? It's at least 5
I
probably.
mean, that was
At least
my first introduction to it. I think that started when Margaret was here.
Yes, it did.
I don't know if Margaret started it, but
No.
it seemed like she had some involvement in it. And I went to the round table prior to being on the finance committee as a member of the schools, just to kind of find out what was going on. And frankly, I was a bit shocked at the contentiousness between the selectmen from towns, the finance committee from towns, the town administrators / managers, and the schools. And it just, for me, it was somewhat eye-opening, as well as, you know, when frustrations come up a number of times. And, you know, one of the things that in trying to put together the budget, particularly this past go-around, was that, you know, the town is held to 2.5%, and the finance committee, the town administrator, the board of selectmen have some ability to say to all our municipal boards, you need to bring in a budget that is at this level of funding. We just won't look at anything else. And we have no ability to do that with the school budget. And this is, I know where your frustration is coming from. And I think that you and I both had hoped, when we heard Mitch was on the review, that we might be able to send him with some thoughts, some ideas that I think he's probably on a fairly similar wavelength, and hope that there might be something that comes out of it. And without him here, we're not gonna get the answer to that question.
Not tonight.
Not tonight, right. I mean, eventually we will. One of the things that I was able to do the other night was to talk to a fellow that was on the finance committee prior to.
Hold on one second, guys, I don't mean to be rude. He's trying to get in, he doesn't realize that we're meeting in person.
Aha.
aha,
So prior,
so we should go on,
We don't have Zoom set up for this meeting. We're
There
meeting
wasn't
in
a
person.
link.
Huh?
There wasn't a link
I
on the
know.
agenda, so I don't know how,
well, but it's the same link, right? It's the same, you don't change that.
no, but it's not on the agenda at all.
No, we
There's
don't,
no
we're
meeting
not
set
doing
up.
it.
Oh,
Well, would it help to have him here? even if it's through Zoom?
Well, you'd have to get it all set up. It's not something that just, you gotta
I
get it
could
all
set
set
up
up.
a Google
I
Meet
can- I
quick
can
enough
set
to
up a-
do
I
it,
can
but
set up a
it's
Zoom
probably
meeting.
not
I
gonna
mean-
be-
It would have to be set up as part of the meeting posting, so other people.
Right,
know about it.
exactly, because so you can't let one in and not let everybody else in, that would be, I'm not going up on charges for open meeting law violations.
So anyway,
Fair enough.
So, back to what I was getting at is I spoke to a fellow that had been on the finance committee prior to the 9 through 12 level of regionalization. K to 8 were still regionalized, and
We're owned by the town.
it was pretty much the same discussion and frustration, and that would have been, you know, in the 70s or 80s that he was doing that. And in reading this document, it appears to me that in that line it says, "We will be given a budget that adheres to state law, blah, blah, blah."
right,
That buried within that state law are things that essentially give the school the ability to act the way they do. I mean, you know, I've had any number of people say, why does the school come in and do that? Even other town employees, why do they do it? Because they can. If the other town departments were able to come in with a budget this far above, they would. They don't, because Ron and the finance committee and the select board are able to say,
But we have a certain, no.
That we-
It's not, we can't, we have a certain set of bucket of money that we can spend, and that's it.
Well, also, that everybody else is accountable to someone. And the Wachusett Regional School District is only accountable to the voters. And no one can, and they had what, this year, they had 2 votes of no confidence for Darryl McCall, and they're not accountable. He does not, he marches to, God bless him, he can do whatever he wants. So,
He answers to the school committee, doesn't he?
yeah, but they follow to his, whatever.
no, the school committee's advocating for the schools, which is what
They
a
should
board
do.
should do.
Right, but I mean, there's nobody there, that, there's no accountability for the amount of money they come and spend. We fight every budget season like hell for the last 35 years, 40 years with Tommy and I up there. The same thing happens. There's only been a few years that everybody got along. They don't care. They never care. I don't know how else you...
So for the last 5 years, at the budget roundtable, the towns say they're gonna write a letter to the school and say this is the percentage that we can accept. 1 year it was 3.5, 1 year it was 3. It never seems to get off the ground, but the school hears this and then says, yeah, well, that's nice, but here's 7 or here's 9 or
well, see,
whatever.
I guess that's the concern that I have. Why can't the 5 towns get together, independent of the school district, and work through where they feel the number to be is, and then just give it to them? You know, I understand that, you know, once they give it to them, if they come back and say, yes, 3 is really gonna be 30, and there's little that we can do about it, but, I mean, we really should have an opportunity to be able to express to the people, to the townspeople, that this is where we're now, townspeople. So we talk about Rutland in the vote that gets done at the town meeting, and, I mean, I think we're probably in a better position now to be able to influence that based upon what we see. But if we're the only one that's voting for it, voting against it, and the other 4 town vote, we're stuck. We're paying the bill.
It went into it this year that 2 of the towns we thought were gonna fight against us, or fight with us against it. Both of them accepted
Yeah,
and then let it go. I don't know. I'll fight the fight, guys, but I don't see how
Yeah, but
we're ever gonna win.
the question is gonna be, what fight do we fight? What is it that we're fighting, and with whom? Really? I mean, is the school district, and can Rutland fight the school district? I mean, Tilton and Windmills at that point, I don't know if that's a,
Well, I think that's the question that we hoped Mitch would be able to answer, is
He
if
says
through,
he's gonna be here, he was on daddy duty.
through that review process, can we leverage anything? And if the answer's no, then we gotta go do research and find out, is there another place to do it?
We need that general law to look at also, chapter 7116B and whatever, to look at also that goes along with the budget,
Yeah,
to see what it says. I mean, we need that information.
I believe
'cause
that's the
This is
funding.
pretty,
I believe that's the funding formula.
I mean,
I've
somewhere,
heard that, I've
Would that
heard
be
that
online?
several times over the
Yeah, it's
years.
gotta be
I
online
think
somewhere.
it's easy enough to go and look it up, but the problem is that's the funding formula, which, don't worry, our representatives and our senators have been working on changing for us for probably 5 years.
So,
right, but what I'm getting at is that in there must have the details of, you had asked earlier about the 4 towns, if, you know, if two don't approve, or if 4 approve, then the other one's stuck with it, that kind of stuff. It must say what they can do with their money, it must detail out a lot more stuff that we're talking about.
That we don't know.
Because right here, you can see, it says, they'll present a budget, and that's it. Doesn't say anything else, so we got no recourse, nothing. So without knowing what's in the rest of that law,
I'm assuming that the language that 4 out of 5 towns have to pass, it must be in there, because it's not in here.
correct.
At least, or I missed it.
It's exactly what I'm saying, I don't see it in here, and I don't see the 5-year review in here either, so that must be another agreement maybe that was just agreed to by the towns involved and said, look, we'll do this, or maybe the school committee said, at one of their meetings, they may have voted it and put it on there, things to follow, that they'll do it every 5 years.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, guys, I held this meeting for you guys to discuss it. I look at this as going, we're stuck with it. It's like the IRS and filling out your tax return. You have no choice in the matter. And we can maybe affect some change, but I'm not expecting that change will happen in my tenure as a finance committee member.
Well, the only way, in my being in this town, that ever caused them concern was that we had, when we did the 112 budget, when 2 towns voted down the budget, and that was, how many years ago, Tommy, we did that, I remember. But we
Jeepers,
voted,
that was,
08, 09, I think it was
Right.
around that
Yeah.
time.
that's, so, little history. Back then, everybody was, like now, but we had enough towns to vote against it. I think it was us and Paxton.
it was us and Paxton.
And that put the school into a tailspin, because they could only run a 112 budget, and it was like a tremendous, they worked well with us for a couple of years, because they had a little shock treatment that they didn't wanna do that again. But unless we can affect, one of the ways we can do change is by affecting that. I don't know if we could ever do that, because I don't know that the other towns have the same fortitude when it comes down to brass tacks, right? Paxton cut some things from their budget, Holden somehow found them whatever $1 million to get it.
that's a one-time deal for Holden.
I know.
It's one time. It's just like Ryan's been saying right along, if you use money that is not recurring, you're gonna face it the next year.
We
I
can
guess-
only hope that they face it and then they realize, because the only way to affect change, unless we can find something in this general law, in my eyes, is to put them in a 112 budget, and then they're really good for a few years.
So you guys are aware of the 112? So why don't you explain the 112
It means
process?
they can only spend 1/12 of last year's budget in each month.
If there is not an approved budget
There's not an approved
at
budget
all
in
town
place.
meetings, or 4 out of the 5
Yeah.
town meetings,
That means that
They
they can
get
only
to
spend
it.
1/12 of last year's budget for each of the months until
The
the
budget gets
budget
set.
gets passed.
And the contracts don't come in like that. Contracts are front-loaded.
It's no different than the municipality. We have a lot of
Right.
front-loaded stuff. that
So what
happens.
happens is that puts them, it really screws them up. And then the next couple of years, I wanna use the right proper words, they play well in the sandbox with everybody, because they didn't wanna do this again, because that was and it was finally when the towns had enough, they had enough of what we're dealing with now, and we said, this is what we're doing. So, I don't know that we have enough fortitude within the other 4 towns to do it. Princeton and Sterling don't care. They don't even wanna fight.
Well, it depends, the other towns, it depends on
Where they are on the
with the
scale.
up and down, you know, if they got the revenue and they have, their numbers match in, then it's okay. Like this year, I mean, Holden started feeling the pinch and they were worried about paying the budget. But then, like you just said, they found some money and then, well, all right, we'll go along with it.
Right.
Well,
But they
back when we first regionalized, Rutland couldn't pass that school budget quick enough because they knew Holden couldn't do it. And we, at the moment, had the
Right.
new
It was-
building revenue from the
Right,
big
it was
neighborhood.
favorable
We
to
don't have that
us at
anymore.
that time, right?
So, I mean, I don't wanna be a contrarian here, but is there anything here where we might be able to say that, the town, the taxpayers' rights are being infringed upon?
The
Based upon?
taxpayers have no problem, they vote for the school every single
No,
year.
no, I
No,
understand.
there's nothing, there's,
They didn't vote for this year. This year,
Well, we
they,
don't know if they would
the
have because the way it was
override-
presented.
But the override wasn't affecting the school, the override was affecting municipal government.
but when we said that you're gonna end up, it affects it, but when we had put it on the warrant said that it was contingent upon the override. So they thought that they were voting for the override. I'm wondering if we don't have, if we could potentially have or create an idea that there's an infringement upon,
there's another chair over here.
there's infringement
Are you
upon.
concerned? You can sit there. I'll push over, I'll sit next to Darren, he doesn't fight.
So if there's an infringement upon the rights of the town, the voters of the town, why can't we threaten a lawsuit? Why couldn't the town of Rutland,
Are you paying for the lawyer?
well, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's a class
We
action.
don't have any
Yeah,
money.
but never mind paying, based on what though?
I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm
point.
saying, you gotta have it based on
I
something.
understand that, but what I'm saying is there a basis of non-representation? That they're forcing the town to accept something, so
No,
taxes,
because they
We have
taxes,
it's all
representation,
laid out in here. of
we have
how-
representation, we have school
Right,
committee
we
members.
got 4 people, and that's
We
what's
have-
laid out
we
in
have
the
school committee
agreement.
members.
yeah, but this says that they can do whatever they want.
Well, right, they can, because then,
just-
once you
all I'm-
vote, if you vote for them and they're on the committee, they can do what they want as a committee.
Okay, and I.
But they gotta still come back to town meeting and get the money approved.
Right, and
So-
it sort of
And it's
gets,
always been approved.
again, it's my tail wagging the dog thing, and I don't feel as a senior in the town, I don't feel that I might be necessarily represented if I have to vote for an override, because I wanna make sure that my fire department doesn't have to cut. But I'm really doing it only because the school is.
But I'm not trying to say you don't have good arguments, but, and I'm repeating it, I'm not trying to be
No,
like Chuck.
no,
People have stood up at town meeting and said that before also, you know,
Yeah.
there's been movements to say, okay, we should have separate tax rates so that people that don't have kids in school should pay less and the kids in school pay more, or whatever. That's been talked about over the year, but it doesn't go away because that's not part of these laws that we're talking about in the state.
I know.
So it doesn't,
welcome.
there's no traction. This agreement, if you read, and I read through most of this, when I got, it's based on, it's like when you get a contract from a company and it says, read the fine print in the back, the whole page is in their favor,
Yeah.
it's totally against the person signing the front.
Yeah,
This is in the favor of the school, and it has been since it was written.
and I don't.
Because back then it was easier with, as Ted said a little while ago, it was easier with the funds, the way things work together.
Right.
It's been over the last probably 10, 15, maybe 12, I don't know. Rutland's had an explosion in population and you know,
So it's nice
and
to,
we've seen this year, we had a decrease in 140 students.
Right.
And our numbers are still skyrocketing.
we're going to get to a point where we're gonna pay, we're gonna have nobody in school, and we're gonna be paying $10 million a year.
And so I guess what I'm leading up to is if you read these things, it doesn't say a lot about what we can do or what the select board can do. It talks a lot about what the committee has to do and what the people on there have to do and how it's constructed. Way down to what Ron's been saying, and I didn't disagree with him from the first time he said it, several months ago. You gotta send them a letter saying, we want out of this district unless we can do something about it, because that, what other recourse do you have?
So did you
Can't
read?
afford to be on our own.
I understand that,
Did
I'm
you-
not saying that.
Did
So
you
what do we
read
do?
But
how-
if you
Yeah.
wanna change this so you can put some teeth into it, there's almost no other way out of it.
I see two options, just Darren thinking outside, what Tommy said, or two towns vote against it and they go 112. There's no other way around this.
Exactly,
hard
but
to
you
get
gotta get the other towns to do that.
It's hard to get the towns to do.
Oh, we understand, right? It's all
Right.
And for Darren's 2 cents, if we say we're out of Wachusett School District,
Right.
which, if we wanna throw that out there as a saber rattling event,
It's a threat.
it's gonna, as a threat, it's never gonna pass the time.
Oh, I understand.
And
Probably won't.
it probably won't. But if it ever did, what would we do?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Well, we don't, number one, we don't have a place for
High school, high school.
120 high school kids.
Right, so the whole idea here is, if you look at the verbiage to explicate from the agreement, I mean, you always have to, you know, you're giving things away, or
Oh, yeah.
debt
So, if we wanna send a letter as a threat, yes. I don't know, but they'll probably just laugh at it, right? Cause they know.
so,
Maybe.
Mitch, from your discussions with the other towns, how are they experiencing, they're experiencing frustration, I know that, but they're experiencing what we're experiencing?
Yes, but first, I want to apologize, I was on baby duty, I thought there was a Zoom option,
I told him.
and when Karen texted me, I was like, oh, I'm gonna run up there right now, I meant those disrespect out of it, I just
No
thought, I'm used to the Zoom thing now, so I figured
Yeah,
I could do that, so.
We want to yell at you in person.
No, I hope I didn't hold you up, and.
No, we had a
oh,
conversation without you.
Oh, okay, great. But here I am, and is it through the chair? Are you-
No, just
Did
talk.
you
Yeah,
read
just-
one?
just-
Okay.
No, we had to reorganize, we're
Okay,
doing that
I wanna
next
make
time.
sure that I'm not
This is just,
disrespecting anybody.
this has everything to do with just this tonight,
Yes.
that's it.
So, the way this kind of unfolded this year is the school committee set up they wanted input from the other towns, so they solicited that from the towns, and we had those discussions, and the board had the discussions, and I know that, I had emailed out to you folks, like, what do you think? And I worked with the other towns, and we tried to kind of come up with something that was, I don't want to say unified, but I think the towns share the same concerns, to your point. In particular, Holden, I was surprised that Holden did not put forth an override this year, because that was discussed. And it's going to be put forth next year, is my understanding, which I can't imagine is going to be a popular, like in this community, pitch, particularly given, I think, the way that the district handled education this past year. A lot of parents are upset. We've heard that from our constituents. Paxton has been in the same kind of financial boat over the last several years that we have. So the feedback was almost unanimous in what we were requesting. And to Darren's point, we were requesting language to be stricken from or inserted into this agreement that would make it easier to alter the agreement or withdraw from the district. Now, no one's intent is to withdraw from the district, obviously, because it would cost a lot of money, and the district is, to be blunt, a reason why a lot of folks want to live in these communities, because it is ranked very highly.
Right.
It's not the intent. The intent was to perhaps let the school committee know in no uncertain terms how unhappy we were with the agreement. Do I think that that's going to go anywhere? No. Did the task force that they set up even meet yet after having been established? No. Do I think we'll see any substantial changes to this agreement that was amended in 2016? If I'm going to be honest with you and not political, I'll tell you flat out that I don't think there'll be substantive changes to this agreement. The issue, and I want to make it very clear, and I said this in one of our meetings, we always have this back and forth, and there's a public perception that it's the schools versus XYZ, public safety, the towns. If you look at the per student spending in Wachusett, it is in the lower tier from the statewide average, which there's different reasons why that is. I mean, obviously, it's more expensive to school someone in Natick this here. But it comes down to how the schools are funded and their mechanisms of funding at the state system. So it's not like I think that there's a maliciousness to the funding request. In an organization this size, is there fat? Absolutely. Because this is what I do for a living and I work in an organization this size, and there's absolutely fat in the budget. But if you look at historically, the rate that was negotiated this year, primarily thanks to everybody on this board except for the new members, welcome. But I think it was 3.5%, 3 and change. And Ron had broken it out over the last 5 or 6 years, and we talked about it at town meeting. We're north of 6 for the last 5, 6 years in a row. The problem is that the school used E&D funds or one-time revenue sources to offset that budget this year.
Right.
Next year, I fully expect to be about 6% for the ask.
You bet. I mean, it was $900,000 to start this year. I'll bet it's gonna be over $1 million next year as the increase year over year
Yeah,
for the town of Rutland.
yes. Is there much we can do about it? I'm pressed to find a way, unless, to Darren's point, you're gonna have 2 towns that have to band together and work together. Wachusett made us happy this year because they knew that if they had our vote, the budget would pass.
Right.
But next year, Holden's gonna have to put forth an override, and who knows what's gonna happen, so
I mean,
that's the hope.
but there's gotta be a way. I mean, the people on the district are reasonable people, I think. I'm making a wild ass assumption at this point, but I think they're reasonable. And there's no reason to think that they shouldn't be looking at what they're doing and saying, this is crazy. We can't continually go up. The school population is going down. Now, I understand you can't say if it goes down by 10 people, you gotta cut 10 teachers, or 10 students, you gotta cut 10 teachers, I understand that. But if you look at the overhead, I mean, there's lots of things that the school does. I don't want to diminish the school at all, but the school does a lot of things for the region. It's just that we can't necessarily afford to pay for it all the time. So we should have something, we should have a trigger in the agreement that says, my God, if we're in trouble, I mean, I'm not saying that we want to be able to pay the Board of Selectmen, $50 grand a year. I'm not saying that we're doing that, I'm just saying that.
I make like $300.
No, you're not making anything this year.
No,
Thank you
this
very
year
much.
was cut out. Yeah, so.
But the
Sorry about
point,
that.
yeah, right, we tried. But the point is that we should have some kind of opportunity to be able to say, maybe not this year, for all of the stuff you wanna do, but maybe next year, because at some point in time, the debt on these buildings are gonna start coming off, and we can be maybe a little bit more flexible.
No, our infrastructure is terrible right now, and there's a lot of investment the town needs, and I think, to answer your question, I think that the folks, and this is just me talking personally, the folks and in my involvement with this, but also as a constituent, and working kind of in this field, they're reasonable, but there's no reason why, if I know that I'm gonna win, why wouldn't I ask for everything I need?
Well,
Because it just.
Because I'm gonna steamroll you if I know
Oh,
that
you-
I
I
have.
know.
And two,
yes,
Yeah.
and two, over the years,
2 towns.
we have spoken up against the school budget.
yes,
And you wanna see you get filleted by all the parents by merely saying we should slow down. Not, or
You
cut,
do remember
or vote
last year?
against.
oh, yeah.
No, but, and that was
Cameras
mild.
run around.
And that was mild. We need a fire truck. Our fire truck is 30 years old, we need a fire truck. Guys, nope, they don't care.
Yeah.
You're not gonna, I understand, I think, I don't know how
Well,
to
so,
go.
Darren, listen, the fire chief today said, with this reduced budget, they're going to lose a certification. I'm not sure.
No, they could potentially. He
Right.
did not say we were going to lose it. He said
Let's just
potentially.
assume that
He
it
said
was.
potentially.
Well, there's some,
Let's
yeah.
not
There's
say.
some saber rattling
But
there.
all right, so let's just assume that might potentially happen. And he gave some pretty good statistics, said it's gonna
Yep,
mean an
absolutely.
increase for each one of the town property owners of X dollars, whatever the hell it was. I just think we probably need to be able to be in a position to do more of that. I mean, I don't like threatening people, but if somebody is just being obstinate, the school district saying, the school district saying, never mind, you're gonna have to pay, or the residents of town saying, I'm not doing an increase in taxes.
Or how about going down, maybe they gotta have some bigger potholes in the road. Maybe it's
Talk to
something
Joe.
like that, but I'm just saying, I mean, where is it, you're not gonna fight unless it physically affects you. And the people with kids will fight you tooth and nail, and it's their right, I'm not saying they're wrong. But we will not be fighting fairly the school, because they can send home letters
Yeah.
and do things that we don't have the finances to do.
Well, no, we are not legally allowed to do.
And they do it.
So,
They have funds that are gifts.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So Mitch, going back, so one of our first questions just before you got here was this 5-year review of this agreement. Do you know where that stems from? There's nothing in here that I could see or we could see in this agreement that says
what triggers it?
that they would review, just a review, we understand that. But somewhere,
It's my understanding that it was in either the legalese or it was negotiated when this was first put together, that every 5 years there would be a review process to go over the document.
so that could be something just written in the school department's notes.
I think it's in, it might be, if it's not in this agreement.
I don't
it's
see it
some sort
here
of
either.
bylaw.
I thought I read it in this agreement.
It could have been,
Oh,
and I know that I read
yeah.
it somewhere, Tommy, but there is legal language that requires a 5-year review process.
And you're part of that, it's going on now, but like, since it's not really
It's been
active.
active, they haven't.
Well, there's one thing in here that says something about reviewing the
Yeah,
census every 5 years, so maybe that's translated into reviewing the agreement every 5 years, so.
There is legal language, and I can have Ron pull that from wherever it is to send it, but that is a process that's been outlined, whether it's in here or some other thing that was negotiated. They did set up, the school committee set up its own subcommittee to review it, and then a task force consisting of members of each of the town's select boards, but that group has not met yet.
Okay, so the second thing, I think we need to come up, somebody's gotta give us some substance here that says what we can do and what we can't do, because all the things we've just said now, have been said for the last 20 years, 25, 30
Yeah, but what we
years.
can do is suggest changes, and then the school committee gets to vote on it.
Well, you can,
It's
but
not
they get to
gonna-
vote on, but when you have, how many members from Holden, 12 or something against, look, you know where that goes. I
One
mean,
of the
just,
requested changes that all of the towns were uniform in is
Right.
direct representation, so
Right.
it would be, Rutland would increase next year. We're obviously the second largest town in the district, and we have more of a say, but yeah, Holden is obviously much larger than all of the other communities, so the representation there is still going to be
So,
what it is.
if we can't impact this document to provide the town with the opportunity to be able to control the funding, the only other alternative is to get more money.
Or, again, I think Darren is bringing up some excellent points, where I think we avoided, to use his point, a pothole this year, in the sense where, because the district used that one-time funding to come down to a level that was, it's not acceptable, but it's not
Right.
egregious,
Not as painful.
we got to avoid personnel staff cuts and layoffs that people would notice on a day-to-day basis. The DPW right now is being held together by duct tape.
Right. Chair
But
going by law.
if the original request had gone through, the override had failed, which I suspect in this town, it would. And I'm certainly not a proponent of raising anyone's taxes, so I would be okay with that decision. But at that point, people would start noticing. If we have to go back to a police department that's part-time, or we have to do something like that because of the school district, it might be with the votes that are there.
Yeah, but.
That's what's gonna happen.
But think of what you're saying. If we,
Oh, I know what I'm saying.
if we have to wait for, a couple of years ago, my wife had a problem, and we had to get her to the hospital. and I didn't know what the hell to do, so I called 911. And I'm scared to death because she's in pain, and I'm waiting. I'm talking to the person on 911, and I calmed down as soon as I heard the ambulance coming out. I don't want to wait for that. I mean, I don't want that to be the thing, the leverage that we use to be able to get people to do what they do.
But that's gonna be the reality. And so let me give you an example that is pertinent this year, and I hope people will hear it. One of Seth's requests to CIPC was for an automated chest compression machine for one of the ambulances. It's my understanding we have 2 ambulances. One of them has the machine and one does not. So if both are deployed at the same time, if you're the lucky person that gets the one without the chest compressing machine, you could have a dramatically different health result by the time you get to the hospital. And if those things start to get cut back, there's going to be actual results in town in terms of things that you can tangibly see that are being impacted because of the funding situation we're in. The hope, not the hope, but the reality is with certain projects in the works right now, with the Heights property being announced last week, there's a chance that we get to mask this for another 5 or 6 years, but it's still going to be a long-term problem. And I also, again, it's not totally on the school. It is the changing nature and cost of education that has caused the situation we're in. So it's not like I think the superintendent's, sitting in a basement with a cigar trying to plot how to ruin all of the towns, although he very well may be. But
Have you seen Dan's office? It's in the basement, just so you know.
Unfunded state mandates on education.
I think it's more just some of the issues that come with education right now.
So that's all good stuff to know, but what do we do to change that? What do we do? How do we, who is it that we influence? Do we have to start calling in our state representatives to sit around this table with us every time we meet? Maybe that's an idea.
No.
I think for what it's worth,
Then I'm turning in my resignation now.
If I can,
Because
through
no.
the chair, like for what it's worth, this board this year did a tremendous job in getting more information out to the public prior to town meeting that I think has ever been done about the impacts of the budget on the community. And I think we just have to keep hammering that, and I think eventually stuff like that could make a difference.
Well, and I don't think that we did it. I think we did a better job. I don't think that we did the best job we could. I really don't. I think we need to, we probably need some public service kind of activity that goes on, and meetings, and just.
But I don't think, even if we did a better job, because I think we did a
good job.
But if we did the best job, we're not, overrides directly affect people, and it's not gonna be easy to follow. No matter, we can put Christmas cookies with cinnamon and everything, but or sugar, but it doesn't. We tried twice. The first time not so much because we didn't need it, but the second time we told everybody what was gonna happen.
Oh, I agree.
And it still didn't happen.
But
and that was with a little vote.
But the way we told it to them, I don't know that it was impactful enough. I like your idea of, well, we gotta see the pothole, so maybe we start showing pictures of, this is what the road is gonna look like to you guys. We already, Campbell Street, I can give you some pictures down there, that'd be a tremendous incentive.
Right, but I don't know what, I understand what you're saying, and I don't wanna be giving up, but I think maybe it's a warning shot that the selectmen say, we'd like to, could we investigate, I don't know, coming out of the school committee agreement, the regional school district agreement, not that we're.
Shot across the bow.
Maybe, but, or we try our damnedest to get another school, another town to vote against the budget. And I don't know that that's gonna happen. But we gotta try, I don't see any other way. Cause unless we can figure a way to go through this agreement, which is pretty Loctite,
Yeah.
unless there's a CEO change at the very top of the Wachusett Regional School District, which that's not gonna happen. Cause they do whatever they could do to help the kids and spend their money that way. Seth does whatever he can do to do the fire department, Nick does whatever he can do police department, and Joe does that. They got 2,500 little kids at Wachusett, and then they got all the other towns. They have a big constituency of people that we can't beat.
No, and
You're
I
also,
understand.
you're talking about ostensibly to town politics in the sense where, look, we just had a town meeting, we had 150 people show up. And how
Yeah.
many registered voters do we have? At the end of the day, you can provide them as much information as you possibly can. But if you only have 150 people show up, then it's gonna happen every year.
Yeah,
Holden didn't have a quorum.
Yeah, Holden had a hard time getting a quorum.
They delayed the meeting did a reverse 911 call or
It's over
something to
now.
get it. They had to wait for a quorum. That's how much people, and Holden's affected people, they don't care. So, I'll fight the fight with you, Pete.
Yeah, no.
Just, I'm not negative about this, but I just wish,
but we will be forced into, taking cuts.
Well,
The
if-
conversation on the floor about the secretaries not getting paid, not getting raises, or steps, or, you know, the police department having to lay off the part-time folks. I mean, those things are not going to be, well, maybe, it's gonna become a reality.
if Joe didn't plow the roads, he waited to plow the roads because he couldn't pay overtime for all those hours because it was screwed up, and people couldn't go to Dunkin' Donuts or whatever they gotta do first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
when there's still a foot of snow, maybe that would have cause effect, but nobody feels the pain yet. I hate to say it,
Why I bought four-wheel drive.
yeah, but I mean, nobody feels the pain, so we gotta, unfortunately, I think it's gonna have to get worse.
I just don't like being honest, I'm being really parochial here now at this point. I don't like being the guy who says, well, we gotta take 20,000 out of this guy. And now,
I did everything, I hated that. I was one of those guys. This budget season was the most unfun. It was not a fun year being on the
Yeah.
finance committee, nor with the selectmen. And Ron, you know, we came into this thing, Ron was gonna do his best and try to solve the world, and then by the end, he was beaten man like everybody else. And he did a good job, but he was a beaten
he
man.
did the best he could.
So what do? I think people, and 20 years ago, this guy, Pat Sarkeesian, builds houses in town, got up and said the exact same thing as you
Yeah.
about ambulances and full-time staff and about his wife, and didn't want to do that. That's why he moved to Rutland. You know where he lives now? Holden. Because he couldn't ever take the chance that he feels so strongly, he built the house in Holden. Because he just, I don't know how we, I hate saying it.
Before we had a town
We-
administrator, the selectmen and the finance committee did work with Paxton one year, and we were able to effect the change. The following year, we were in the same situation, and it didn't go as well as we had hoped. They said no, and we were on our own. So you can try to effect the change, and we've done it many years in the past.
The problem,
You gotta just get them, you know, and it's not just the 7 of us or the 5 of them, it's the taxpayers.
well, the problem too is, to be blunt with you, we're all hacks. Like, we're elected, and you have the largest voting constituency in town is gonna be the parent groups. And so it is hard to get the other select boards in town on board with these things when it's gonna be wildly politically unpopular.
Right.
And we did try very hard this year, and we worked with those other towns. But again, you're operating at the will of another board of people that are directly responsible for these groups, and it can be intimidating for those folks.
And, you know, everything is political today, and I understand that. It just,
I was hoping to get more laughs out of the hacks thing. but- Very telling.
little applause sign up there, bitch. I'm sort of feeling frustrated, as we all are. And not these two folks yet, they haven't experienced it yet, but,
I've been part of plenty of budgeting.
you know, so there you go.
I'm not new to
I've
that.
been doing budgets for 30 years.
Yeah.
Until you've done one with the town, believe me, you've never been
That's
through
right.
this budget.
There's so
The
much.
unfortunate thing
I don't know,
about
this all sounds very familiar, so I don't know.
But in
about
a
that.
nutshell, there's things we can't affect change, no matter what. You get this much money, the only way we do it, the school takes this much money, this with the town, and if we can't do it all with the town, we cut it in half, and that's what the town gets, because it can't affect the school, because that's just the way it is.
So two questions. First of all, Mitch, what is your role? Because I honestly, I don't know.
I just walked in, right.
He's obviously very educated in
wandering
this
around down
situation
here.
for
Yeah,
just,
no,
I'm the new guy, so,
I was the chair during this budget process and now I'm the chair.
Selectmen.
okay.
Oh, he's the chairman of the board of select.
I was.
Oh, you what?
Yeah,
Okay,
we
well,
just
It is
reorg,
now.
we reorg when it is now. But I also serve on the subcommittee to work on changing the agreement.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
so can I just interject one thing real quick?
Go ahead.
Because I missed it when I went down, I saw amendments, I didn't read it, but Alex found this. It's section 14, it does say, Wachusett agreement shall be reviewed every 5 years by the committee, blah, 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 public hearing and that stuff, so it is in there. It
So,
is in this
The
agreement.
only thing I will say is, this year was easier, not easy, easier on our department heads because they did level funding. In the past, we had them do a wants budget, a needs budget, they'd bring those to us, then the school would come in March, and we'd go back and say, here you go, and then we'd have to make more cuts, and here you go. They'd be doing 5 or 6 iterations of the budget, so,
But Darren's been saying right along, the level funding is not level service.
no, I know that. I'm the first person to say that, but that's the only thing that saved our department heads this year from having to do.
Because
5
they
or 6.
started off on a low, they
Right.
started off on a lower,
Yeah.
And what are they gonna do next year? They're already starting, they're gonna be at 95% starting next year. Now what do they do? It's just hard.
So, we talk about the same thing over and over again, which everybody agrees with, and it's been agreed for the, I don't know how many years, the same issues. So, can we have somebody that can review this, and only way I know if it's gonna be a legal situation, is that somebody can look at this and say, how can we affect a change in here to do what we're talking about? To do, somehow have an amount of control over the budget process to limit the amount of increases based on what we can increase.
And then
It's the
we
same for
would-
every town.
We would say, Mitch, here's some ideas that we have,
Right.
and you would take that to the review.
That's right.
So can I make a suggestion then, as an individual board member? I think if you all wanted to review this, and you were to request formally from the Board of Selectmen that we use some of what we have budgeted for town council to look at this and see what's feasible, we could do that. I just don't I don't know what the realistic feasibility is of being able to impact that, because even if we have suggested changes, it still has to be voted on by the school committee, and that's gonna
Correct.
be, that's gonna be tough.
I think.
Let's not flush any more money down the toilet, guys.
But 80% of this, we're not looking to change or whatever. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. We're looking at the budgeting and the funding process. And that's what we need somebody to give us advice on to go in here.
Every town has.
There's no
requested-
other ideas
Yeah.
that we have, or we don't know of a way to go into this. And I don't think it's a waste of money if you ask somebody that's knowledgeable, or should be knowledgeable, to tell you how to approach this.
Okay.
That's what we're sitting here for, that's what we wanna do, that's what we've talked about several times in our
I
meeting.
can tell you as an individual, I'm not gonna say yes, because I know we have 4 votes out of, 24? We're not gonna win that, because we had, out of our 4
Okay.
votes, 3 of them voted against and 1 voted for the
Okay,
budget.
so if we don't have a course to go forward, if we don't have some solid facts to move forward on, what are we talking about there? We no sense in even talking about it anymore. Okay, so,
I make a motion, I'd like to make a motion.
Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we make a formal request to the Board of Selectmen through the chair that that we have town council review this and see if there's any way that we can possibly affect change the financial agreement that we have.
focusing on budget and funding.
Financial agreement, that's what I,
Correct.
financial agreement, part of this agreement.
So the motion,
Second,
okay, open for discussion. So, from the perspective of being specific, we would almost want to be able to say, that we were looking at, whatever the budget section is, section.
I'll make my,
Section
whatever.
10, section 10, that's what we're looking, that's,
That's what it is.
that's how we
I'll
want the
amend
town
my,
council offense.
I'll amend my motion to review section 10 budget.
And do we want to look at anything else in that light? Do we want to say, hey, how do we get out of this thing, or is that something we should look at? I mean, it's sort of specified here,
Yeah, section 10, but.
so we know.
Well, so what you're asking is for them to review the entire
16B.
16B, chapter 71, 16B, Massachusetts
Yeah,
law.
yeah,
Which was what they would, I'm sure they
Right.
know, but.
I mean, the
the
things
other
that
thing
I've
in here
thought
too-
of are,
I mean, I don't know how else, you know what I'm saying?
can we limit their request amount? Can we
I don't.
change the 4 out of 5 towns to, if 5 out of 5 towns, that would make it difficult.
See, I don't want to change their request. I want their request to be real, as Mitch was saying. I mean, there's
Well,
nothing,
we keep
there's
saying
no.
it's not, though.
No, but there's, so there has to be something, there should be something in there that says, you've gotta be reasonable, quote unquote. And then, how do you measure reasonableness in this instance? Is it 62%? Are you 60%, 2% of your budget? Or are you more, it should be less? What's reasonable?
The school committee has to, they're tasked with doing that, and if the school committee's not doing it, then we have to vote in a new school committee. You run into the same problem over and over again. The school committee, in my opinion, when it comes to the budget, should be more in control of the reins, and they're not. They defer to the administration, and that's really not how that should operate.
Well, to Mitch's point though, the price of education has gone up significantly. I mean, it's expensive to educate people. I mean, it may seem outrageous as the price increases year over year, but the amount to say that it costs $900,000 more to educate somebody in a year is, it's not that outrageous.
With 140 less students.
That's the point.
140 less students
I mean,
from Rutland last year, and there still was the 900-some thousand requests.
So,
Increase.
so
Right.
it has to be reasonable accountability for the dynamic that's involved in the school population. Again, 10 years down the road, we're being responsible for $20 million worth of spending, and a damn kid in school. And that's not reasonable, they have to be responsible.
So going back to what you just said, Darren, and what Peter said about the only other one I can see in here, it's at section 6, it's transportation. And it's only one sentence, and this is, the district shall provide for transportation for students in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts state law and school committee policy. Well, the state law says they're supposed to fund the regional transportation budget 100%, and never have.
But they don't.
Exactly.
They did, so,
So we sue.
The state,
well, and there's a spot, hey, there we go, you
Yeah.
could do that, there's a specific point you could work on. But that's the only other one that I see in there that might be something to add to what we're asking.
Tamika, could you read back what my motion said, please?
What the hell did I say?
We're still open for discussion though, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A motion to make a formal request to the Board of Selectmen to have town council review, section 10 of the regional agreement.
Which is the financial,
Right, it's budget, it's the budget.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's what's seconded.
Well, yeah, and that's to provide us with information on what can be done there to affect what we want to do.
I don't, it's a place to start. I'm not, I don't know what the opinion.
That's what I'm saying, we
I
gotta
don't-
start
we
somewhere,
gotta start
we gotta do
somewhere.
something.
I don't know what the opinion of town council would be, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, that's what we're asking for. What's the opinion?
We don't ask town council very many things.
Right,
Of
so-
the amount of town council that gets used in this town, we use it.
Yeah, I understand that.
So I'm not really worried about that.
So we could, she
And
could.
I know Karen's rolling her eyes, but we don't wanna spend any more money, but
She
we
could
do
come-
not use them at all. So
She could come
I think
into the
this would be
meeting
a fair result.
laughing, and that's okay, but at least it'd be her opinion. So that's why,
Well, there's no other suggestions being coming forward of what we can do to get off the square one here.
Would the, Mitch, is the, let's vote on, it's not discussion,
Through the chair.
it's through the chair. Could we vote on this, Mary?
no, I think there's still some more discussion going,
Go
so
ahead.
let's not talk over people.
So, being am new to all this. So if I heard correctly in the beginning of the meeting, the school presents their budget, but they never justify it? Or they're supposed to,
They do a nice PowerPoint.
I'm sure they do.
This-
I've seen them when I was on the PTO.
This year, we did get a line-by-line budget. This is the first time in my 9-year tenure that we got it.
Point of order,
Well, yeah,
that line-by-line budget had no key to what it meant. And if you read through it, there was teachers that made $16 million.
But
So
do-
you can't understand, you are correct, Karen, but they gotta give us a budget that you can read. If you saw it, you couldn't pull it
but
apart.
to your question about them justifying their budget, they come to us and they have every year, and they make a presentation. We have the presented budget in our budget book. We have all the no, it's summarized, but it's the budget. They sit in front of us and they say, we're doing this, that's why these numbers are here, and this is last year's numbers, here's the new numbers, this is why, and they have their whole program of, they're justifying what that budget is. Now, the problem there is, they tell us that here, they have, the school committee hasn't voted on it yet, and they vote on it, and they just go down here and they say, well, we told you, we might be able to change some things, but they voted
Sharpen
on
their
it, so we don't
pencils.
have, so too bad.
I don't wanna hear that anymore.
Yeah,
The reality though is that it is the school committee's responsibility to
Right.
oversee the justification.
yeah.
The only responsibility, it's my understanding, again, speaking on behalf of myself, but it's my understanding that the school only has a responsibility to present us with a number. So the in-depth justification that has to be worked out in the school committee, that's supposed to be their process. And if they're not doing their jobs, which I'll go out on a limb and say that we've had some interesting school committees, then that's on them.
No, but our job is to examine that budget, because that's our town bylaw. It says we're supposed to
It is,
look at
but
every
in terms of what
every
goes into
single thing there
what
is.
goes into that baked cake, the school committee should really have a control on that.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, you're right there,
But
absolutely.
are there any state laws that we know of that might exist that they have to, the school needs to justify and follow that they aren't?
It's in this,
The town council would do.
But town council did tell us this year, which was good, because a few years ago, we presented the budget and we presented, excuse me, I'll go back a step. We presented a reduced number, then the school committee came back to us and said, look, by law, you're supposed to at least tell them what the full number is, which is what happened. Then the number, and then we amended it down. But that's the only thing I remember. Town council did come back to us this year and said, you can write this, that's where the motions were written, the way they were, so that we can write, yes,
Contingent upon.
the amount was, but this is what we can provide.
We don't have to put forth the
Right.
budget that the school committee
Right.
gives us. We can give an amended amount and not have to tell anything
Right.
differently.
And that came to us from them, that we had to tell that full amount, which they
Yes.
corrected, so.
But to answer your question directly too, right through the chair, the district has a responsibility to report all of these numbers to DESI, and all of their metrics too, and it's all published online through DESI's website.
What was that mentioned?
The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Oh, yeah,
But I think,
if you can read all that stuff, I mean,
If we-
it'll take you 6 months and 2 years.
Lynn has a good point. And, Lynn, first off, I apologize, she hit me because I talked to her way, but, I'm sorry. But what I would like, I think what we're gonna do, is we've got two more people that are into finance that can help us this year. And when we get this budget, maybe we can affect change by finding out what's actually in the budget, because I'm just a construction guy, and Tommy's a fireman, and we all try, you can't pull it apart. It was, like, I spent hours and hours, and I called Karen in tears, and I'm like, you can't even get numbers out of it. I mean, there was a teacher that made $16 million, it was like something stupid, so a teacher didn't make $16 million, it was a group of teachers, but that's how they grouped it together, and they don't want us to know. But if we're armed with it and we have enough time, one of the problems we have every time is we're under we're under a gun. We gotta get it done. They give us this budget and we don't have enough time. Maybe we can have like a little subcommittee that we can get it as early as we can. And we can sit down and pull it apart. I'll make the fight. I'm not afraid to fight, but I can't.
But to answer your question
That's a
too,
request.
Darren, we've asked for the budget early on.
Yeah.
It just is never ready. We get the budget when they make their
But
presentation, it's not ready
But
till
you
then.
can't get, if you could say, if we could say with the people that are real good with finance can tell us, this is the form we gotta get it, we can ask for that. But this past year, we didn't have enough time to do it, kinda on purpose. I
We
think
also
they-
did, so I mean, like, we asked repeatedly during both the budget presentation and the roundtable where Manager Lukes and Holden and Ron were very aggressive. As was myself, I mean, what is the difference between minimum local contribution and like whatever the commitment is? We ask for that number every year, and they try to hide it every year, and they never give it to us. So
And
you can ask.
you got an argument over it in a meeting, we were there, and they
Yeah.
just ignored you.
You can ask, but that doesn't mean they're gonna give it to you.
But I'd like to
They'll
have,
have to give it to you later, but then it later doesn't show.
I'd like to go, if we could figure
Freedom
out
of
how to get.
Information Act request is a perfect thing, that's how you get information.
there you
But don't
go.
they do a preliminary budget? That's what they
Not that we
release
could
in it?
get, because they don't wanna
No,
break
they
it.
do a budget that they give us,
The
and
other
then it
problem
has to go to the school committee.
is, to be blunt, again, speaking on behalf of myself, when you have a budget that's that size, you can present whatever you want. I mean, that's not how they're actually spending the money. It's gonna get spent in different places to move things around. And that's normal. It's not saying it's malicious. It's just when you have a budget that's that size, the budget they're giving you is not gonna be 100% accurate representation of how that money's being spent anyhow.
Well, and that's in that law, that's part of this budget clause here.
Are
It
they,
must be.
are they required to spend all the money that we give them? Do they put it in a slush fund somewhere?
That's called errors and deficiencies
Yeah.
file.
And how much is in
That's
that?
their free cash. They had $1.4 million, I believe, something like
A
that.
dollar or two.
And that was built up over what period of time? That's a lot of money.
Every few years, because they spend a lot of money on different things when they feel like
Well,
it. so-
this thing says that they can use excess money on capital.
Right.
Up to so many dollars.
Yeah, so I mean, it has a kind of a slush fund wording in there too.
Right, but it is, they don't
That's
have to.
their free cash.
When they get their budget approved and our payment is X number of dollars, that's it, it goes to them and nothing ever comes back.
It never will.
I would
No,
love.
the law says they can keep it and spend it,
Right.
as Karen said, excess and deficiency.
I would love to, do whatever we can to get it early. And then, as early as we can get it, and then have people that are really good finance brains help me pull it apart and tell me what we need, and then we'll affect change somehow.
Well, maybe-
Try, because I just
I
can't,
hope
we
we can get
couldn't.
it early, Darren, that'd be awesome.
But maybe that's one of the amendments that we ask for, is if there's excess money, it get X percentage get returned to the town.
No, it's in the state law.
Yeah. What you could do too is you could take
Here's-
last year's budget and add 7% to it, and that's probably what you're looking at.
But here's a good example too, this year, they presented the budget, and we're sitting there
Well,
talking.
They're gonna make up.
We were asking about positions, they had new positions. And this is, I can tell you, the stories will go on, I don't wanna talk too long about it, because the stories have been every year. But they had $300,000 in the budget last year. Finally, after asking a number of questions, because one was asked a question, they said, oh, we haven't hired any of those people yet.
So don't hire them if there's no money to do
No,
that.
no, they had $300,000 to use, but they didn't hire them, but they're asking for another
That was
$300,000 in
for the
this budget.
socio-emotional
So then
counselors and so
so
forth.
Tommy affected change, so then they went and hired this, one of the 6 or 7 positions was the assistant principal at Naquag that they didn't have for a few years that they filled because they had $300,000 that they had to get rid of.
Yeah, but my
And how
point
many
was,
assistant-
going into this budget, now they've got $600,000, because they don't have to give us anything back.
See,
They got
Tommy's an
$600,000.
inadvertent job creator over here. And then they hire all these
Well,
people.
and they said, well, these, some of those, they weren't gonna hire them anyways, even though they were
Yeah.
listed there.
Yep.
And how many assistant principals do they need up at the high school? I know my kids are up
Well,
there.
There's
See,
5
and
or
that's
6.
been an ongoing, that's been
Do
an
they need
ongoing
that many?
argument
Well, no,
for
again,
years.
I do wanna, the amount of administrators per student and the amount of teachers per student is in line with state best practice.
Okay.
So there's
Is it
no
what's
excess there.
needed? I mean, it's in line, is it what's
It's
needed?
probably not. That's the
problem-
answer to
well,
the
the
question
problem, though,
may
is
not
that-
be the answer we wanna hear.
The problem though is that when DESI issues guidelines, and if your district is under those guidelines, it's gonna create problems, and it's, so, in
And
terms
again,
of the
but that
staff.
that whole argument comes back down to, if there are enough administrators, or if people not quick, when the voters vote, they say, yep, it's okay if you got that many, that's how it ends up.
If you also, through grants and stuff, through one of the one of the problems we had this year is, the fire department got a grant, they put on people, and then if we forced a cut that they had to lose those people, there was the possibility that we were gonna have to pay back the federal government the money. So, in these little kingdoms,
Little loopholes.
schools, public service.
But it's not
Things like that.
unprecedented either, that's happened in a lot of
Right,
places.
right, but, so what they do is they put these things in there, so you really can't cut here and there. You have to, like, there was very few things in some of the budgets that we could affect change on because there were grants and stuff and things that we had to keep up with.
Are we still on the same motion that we haven't voted on
Yeah, I
yet?
don't
I
think
think
so.
we always had some
Yeah,
questions.
we're still discussing.
No, I know, but I
Yeah.
think there was, I don't know if you're done yet, or
Yeah.
not, but,
Well, I mean, obviously,
see,
nobody
I just
likes
had
to
that
talk
feeling
about.
he was ready to ask.
He
No,
was
it's fine.
percolating.
I mean, everything we've talked about is cutting, the other side is more money.
Right,
So, you know, what is the, where are we at with the other side?
bake sales.
No, I mean, taxes.
No, you can't
No,
do
we're,
that.
we've pushed it to the limit, it's pushed to the limit right now, what we can do.
Well, there
so-
has been some property that's gonna be sold.
But that's one-time revenue.
Right.
And I don't wanna listen to that for the next 2 years of how we
Right.
shouldn't use one-time revenue to balance the budget.
That
We
kicks
don't
the
wanna
can.
use one-time revenue to balance the budget, remember
So,
that?
so what we need is more marijuana shops.
We need to get you that revenue sheet, you can look at that, you'd understand that better.
Okay.
We can get it.
And
It's
and-
on your, you put the revenue sheet on there, so it's
And the
on the,
Chromebook.
You know,
drive.
the revenue sheet has anticipated incomes from the year, what you call it, and we've kind of pushed that up a little bit too. That's something the accountant takes and he kind of estimates what it should be, and that's been pushed up just a little bit.
So we're not legally allowed to go higher, is what I'm hearing.
We're not legally allowed to go
Prop
higher than
2.5.
2.5,
Okay.
that's it.
That's on property taxes, correct.
Gotcha, okay, just making sure.
And there's new construction taxes figured in there, and there's other things figured in, there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's just, it's not enough to satisfy the school.
And our municipal services the way we want it. It's not just the school, it's both, to
That's
try to
correct.
balance them.
Yeah.
So, is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other future discussion? Does everyone remember what the motion is? Don't all talk at once, please.
Right,
I'm not,
we're requesting a legal advice from,
Right? Okay, so all in favor?
I,
All opposed? Aye. Absolutely not.
Okay.
It goes. So, Tamika, would you be so kind as to send a note on behalf of the finance committee to the chair of the select board and ask them to
to
do
the
that
select
for
board
us?
from us, yeah.
You got it.
Do you guys need some detail, or do you think you got a pretty good idea of what?
I'm gonna let Lyndon figure it out.
Well, we
Yep.
gave you direction because it clearly states
Yeah.
Financial.
the
Yep.
financial side. Yep, go ahead, Tommy.
We had a comment earlier about getting either our state rep or senator in here, and they certainly respond when you ask them to come with information, but is it something that we absolutely do want to, I mean, they've heard the same thing from people here, but on the transportation part of it, is it something we want to talk to them about and say, okay, what?
Usually they come to the budget roundtable. Both of them are usually there at the budget roundtable.
Do we want to get them to come to this meeting, as it was talked about earlier, so that we could talk to them directly, just ask some questions about the transportation and find out what the straight scoop is from the state about why it's not funded fully or whatever? Brewer worked his way up, and I think he got us to 90% one year.
They did the year he retired, they gave us money for it as a retirement gift to Senator Brewer.
I don't think I wouldn't be opposed to having them come here. I don't know that there'll be a huge benefit, but at least we can cry a river again.
yeah,
We could ask questions too.
yeah. Okay. So, do we have any other business? I have one thing that I want to be on.
Oh, okay, so when would we like to have this meeting?
Oh,
When are we meeting? When's our next meeting, or when do we?
I have no idea. I haven't received any communication. For all I know, they're all still going to Ian.
so, there's that issue of reorganization, right?
Yeah, that's not tonight. That's gonna be our first finance committee meeting. Although this is a finance committee, this is only for the school.
Okay,
This is only for the school, because this really isn't our purview.
right. No, I
This is,
understand.
so before we start getting into finance stuff, I wanted to get this off so that we can do whatever we've gotta do. I'd like to keep the school separate and apart from all of the finance committee
Okay.
business, because it takes up too much of our time as it is.
Okay,
So the other question too is, going along with that, is so with the override failing, what does that do that we have to look at in the budget or do anything about?
No, we had the two budgets.
right.
No, I understand that, so is there anything that we have to relook at or do, or,
No,
okay?
no, because we had already provided the budget with the override and the budget if the override failed. That was the $237,000.
Okay, yeah, we did,
So
Yeah.
you're still on Danny detail, right?
Yes.
So,
You may want to go.
So the other 4 towns passed the budgets, is that we didn't? Well, we didn't because of the override with those
Right,
clauses in there.
yeah. So when would we like to see about our
When would you like
annual,
to see?
the 12th of November? So you guys gotta tell me. Unfortunately, guys, I've been going to these roundtables and I hear them. I hear Harriet Chandler, I hear Goby, I hear Ferguson. I know they're working on it. This is a very long process. It's not something that we're gonna get an answer for. And not for nothing, guys, I've seen a lot of you guys for 4 months. I kind of
I
want
know.
some nice free.
I know. So, but
But I mean,
again,
if we think we're gonna get something out of it, I'm fine with it. But
I
they
don't-
come every year to the roundtable and we've never gotten anything out of that
I understand,
roundtable.
but maybe some of these other members would get something out of some of the questions and answers and some information.
well, but so again, I know it's sounding like it's not really critical. It's not something that we can really have an effect on right away. So let's be planful with it and do it at an appropriate
September
time.
or October.
Yeah,
Timeframe.
instead of trying to do it as quickly as we could.
That would be good.
We may end up having to have some meetings prior to a special town meeting, correct?
We're probably gonna have more meetings in the summer.
Yeah.
We should be having, I would assume there would be transfers of expenses between, and any
Oh, yeah.
reserve fund requests. And usually those have to be completed by the 15th of July.
Yep.
So.
Well, that's gonna be a little late now, right?
Yeah, but we can approve them, I believe, after, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure because I haven't heard anything from anybody.
If you haven't heard anything, they maybe already haven't squared away, so.
They can't, they have to have us sign off. We're the only ones that can do reserve funds.
Depends on what well, reserve, I mean, then maybe there's nobody asking for it.
But when we transfer between expenses, we have to sign off, select board has to sign off, that's the rule.
I think if it goes between salaries and expenses, because we voted those budgets with,
Right, but anytime there's a
Okay, that's
change,
fine. Yep,
we always have to
whatever.
sign off on those. So I haven't heard anything, so I can,
September.
okay, so,
I like that.
okay.
Decisive.
I will, that's usually when they start their new legislative, schedule, so, Tamika, could you reach out to Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson and see if they can, what night they might be free to have a meeting to discuss?
In September.
Yeah, funding. I figured get on the calendar early. No, we won't, if, I'd love to say that we won't need to have a meeting until October, but no.
Not really.
Okay, so that was all we had for this evening. Is there anything else?
No, I just have just a couple of things.
Good,
I
that's-
don't know if we want to hold Mitch up for this. This is
You know.
more.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone again, sorry for
Thank
late.
you.
Thank you for coming, Mitch. We appreciate
You
it.
brought your daughter, you might have forgiven you that much faster.
Oh, sorry, she's popular.
So, I just want to let folks know, and most of you do it, I sent out mail, that thanks to Tamika, We finally figured out, I talked to Tamika, I talked to the police chief, I talked to Ron, I talked to Mike Nicholson. I talked to everybody trying to figure out how the hell I get the permission to be able to get access to the Google Drive. And so what I've done is I've taken everything that we've had, that I think we've had, and I put it on the Google Drive. And it's not just minutes of meetings and stuff, there's a handbook that we have that you may want to look at, about finance committee stuff. It's a pretty extensive, book.
It's pretty pricey for me to print it.
Oh, it was
So
too-
I looked and I was like, I'm not independently wealthy, so I'm not printing them. I'll bring
And
it
she
back.
was, yeah, she was gonna have her do it in their work, and I said, don't do that.
Oh, no, I was going to ask, I did ask, and
Oh, you did?
of course I did, I
Oh.
asked. And he goes, well, I don't think we should at this point.
Okay.
I don't want to affect profit sharing
No,
either.
I understand. So there was that book, there's a folder out there for the budget work that was done, the capital plan is out there. There's a folder for each one of the minutes of the agenda and the minutes. And Tamika, I don't know if you feel comfortable doing this, let me know if you're not. But when you do the meetings, the minutes and the agenda, you can always load them up there instead of, if you have access.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or would you prefer to get them in the mail like you have been getting?
I think it's important to do both.
Okay,
Because to be honest with you, sometimes people forget if it's not there in your email, so that way it kind of helps to remind you, because I know.
and I like the idea of having the agenda and the minutes in the same folder, so it's right there.
Yeah, if they're in both places, because if I don't see it come on my email, I mean, I'm not gonna go
Look on
searching,
No,
right?
Okay,
no, but that way it's always there, so you don't have to print it and carry around paper.
and as we just talked about, the district agreement is up there now as well. So, the reason I decided I wanted to try to do this is just as a feasibility study, really. Is it something that's beneficial to us, does it work for us? If it becomes cumbersome or too much of an effort, we can just just get rid of it and not do it. But I've always been comfortable having a source to go for, especially when we're in meetings and somebody doesn't have the document that they thought, and we're putting things off. It's always nice to be able to have it available.
With as many times as we made changes, that would have been really helpful, so.
Exactly.
I'm very excited for that.
So, and that's my,
Just so both of you know, when you get your Chromebook, your username is on the white strip on the outside, and when you lift it up, there's a sticky note, and that's your password.
Secure.
Anytime anything has ever changed on these for the select board, it causes more problems, so we're keeping them the same because it works. It's all public knowledge anyway, so if someone's trying to sneak in, let them.
right,
All of the members that were part of last year, I need your budget books back. I do not need anything except the tabs and the notebook.
can you, okay.
I need to bring them back. The town administrator's office is hot and heavy to get them back. This is the third email and a personal request, so I'm asking for them back.
All right, so, the
Okay.
budget book is on the drive, so if you're concerned about, well, I won't have the information, bring the book back and you can always go to the Google Drive and get the book.
I don't mind,
Everything's up there.
I don't mind, you can bring it to my house, we can bring it to the next meeting, I'm fine with that, but I just need them back, so please.
Or leave them uptown, right?
I'd rather bring them all back, all 5 together.
Oh.
I'd like to put it on his desk, gently.
Excuse me.
This way I know all of them have been there, so that I don't get emails saying I only got back 4 out of the 7, and then I'm trying to figure out who gave what, so I just would,
Did
I don't
David
have,
bring the book?
I can't afford the fuel to go in your house and go past it.
I'll stop by and pick it up.
I gotta get it cleaned
We
up.
can wait
and
till,
get
we
it.
can wait till the next meeting, it's not a problem, I'm just saying, let's keep it squared away, so.
Do we, the only other thing that I was just thinking of, we're not gonna get surprised, at a special town meeting of changes to the bylaws, right?
No, I am still waiting, right now, if you were to go under the bylaw subcommittee, you cannot listen to any of the minutes because we don't have access. I've been asking since April, I continue to keep asking. And at such time as we can access all of that, then I want to have a discussion on the bylaw. But right now, we can't even hear why they wanted to change what they did because there's no minutes.
Because we have to, so
The bylaws are up on the Google Drive as well. The
the existing,
finance committee,
existing and the
existing
new.
and the proposed.
Yeah.
So there's something that you guys, there's quite some substantial changes proposed to the finance committee way we operate in a bylaw change with the town. We can all read it and see what you think, but they're kind of gonna clip our wings a little bit, and we probably will not support that, but we have to fight together and just look at it, and if you have a minute, have a wine with Karen and she'll explain to you why we don't wanna do it, but
I think if you read the
You'll understand.
the finance committee handbook, one of the things they said is, you don't wanna lose oversight.
Right.
And this year, if it wasn't for this finance committee, we would not be with a budget, we would not be there. We did
So,
the budget this
we
year.
just gotta be, they're proposing a lot of, when you get a chance, look at the way the bylaw stands now and the proposed changes.
As
We just,
soon-
it's gonna come, I'm sure we'll have some discussion, but it's one of those things you guys should be just kind of
As soon
peruse because
as
it's,
soon as the minutes are available, I check every 2 weeks, as soon as they're available, I'll let everybody know which ones to listen to, because they're voice recordings, so you have to,
Ah, okay.
yeah, so they're voice recordings. So,
Is this from the selectmen?
no, this is the ad hoc bylaw subcommittee, so you have to listen to the meeting, so I have to.
have a good night.
Yes.
There isn't a requirement that they have to put that in print for a record for the town?
I have asked several times to Anita and haven't gotten a clear answer, so can't tell you.
Seemed to me that would, well,
I would think because you
Right, so-
you can't put in those sleeves to protect for history purposes
Right.
voice recording, but that's what I've been asking since April. As soon as I know, I will take it to find out what meetings, so that you only have to listen to the ones that you have to listen to.
Because there was a statement made in the meeting that they were given to us and we
We
failed
haven't
to act.
responded.
Yes,
And I acted that night and handled it.
yeah.
I don't like the fact that we're gonna get bamboozled and run over
I know.
if we're not
no,
careful.
when we saw those, we said we wanted to review them.
Review it,
When
and
we
we're never gonna review, then he made it at a public meeting,
we
Tommy.
reviewed them, and
He made it at a public meeting.
And
that
we asked
hadn't
for
done
the
what we were supposed to
information
do.
so that we could go over it further.
Right.
So we handled.
So we should have that for September, if we get the information, I agree with you. if
I
we
gotta
have
get the
info-
voice recordings, as soon as
Right.
those voice recordings are, that's on my list to do, I check, like I
That's
said,
fine.
every 2
Yep,
weeks.
okay.
I got nothing better to do than listen to Peter Crane.
Exactly, exactly.
I thought I remembered seeing an email from Anita within like the past week or so that there was something where like you had to set up a Microsoft account to be able to access that.
No, they
or she
said
found a
that, no,
program.
I sent it to her saying, you need a Microsoft account. I don't wanna use my work Microsoft account to get into there, that, or my personal one. I shouldn't, no one should need a Microsoft account to get in to get those. They're public information. You can't force people to
Right.
get into that. That needs to be where people can get to it.
And they weren't visually recorded?
They were not visually recorded, it's voice recordings.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought the visual,
No,
oh my God.
no. So, I'm on that, please, I'm on a regular basis, I'm asking. Go ahead, motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Okay.